Peter, lovely to have you on the call today. And thank you for offering to say a few words about your impressions of vocal Tai Chi through coming to the workshops, one-to-ones, and through conversations with me over several years. Just a little bit about who you are would be nice. So who are you, Peter? Tell us a bit about you.
You're not asking what I do then.
No, I'm saying who, not what.
Yeah, I'm an ex thespian. I'm somebody who's had a range of jobs. I have worked for a film company as a script reader. My first love was the drama. I have somewhere in my basement, I have a diploma in teaching acting, but latterly I trained as a psychotherapist, and counseling initially, and then Jungian psychotherapy. But I have a degree in anthropology. I have a fascination with the indigenous and with repairing community and culture, an ecological approach, I suppose, to healthy individuals within healthy cultures, and that the one cannot happen without the other, that there is something holistic about that we are Russian dolls. And so, yeah, that's my thing at the moment, is helping people to find what's not being acknowledged and allowing it to come through so as to balance in the ecology within and without. And I like to hold fires. I like to use nature. I say use nature. I like to co-create in a natural setting or among plants and trees. So I have a little garden, and I like to have sacred, well, fires anyway. And there's a lot of groups that I am affiliated with who are specialists, and I bow to them. They are the specialists. I'm somebody who's more like a ground triage person who. Yes. Anyway, that's.
Thank you. That's a very accurate sketch and full arc perspective.
Think about how do we take off our armor and refresh the wellspring of where creativity comes from. And as I say, I think that given that both one-to-one and in groups, there is an opportunity to take time and space to be seen and to be heard, and to allow whatever comes out to come out, and to have it met. And the sound is met not with that's flat or that's, can you in other words conform to an external ideal of what music should sound like. This is about the Swana people, in the Swana language, rather. In Botswana, there is a word, isidumu, and it means, it's applied to animals, but it's also applied to humans, and it means the cry. And every creature has its cry. And if a child in Botswana doesn't open its mouth and cry, there's something wrong with it. And that is very counter our notion, which is a good child is a child that doesn't cry.
Except when they're just born, they should cry out.
Yes, the first breath comes with it. Yeah.
That is a sign of.
Yeah. But I feel that I like this expression, growing down, not growing up. And part of growing down is about coming into the body and allowing what's in the body to speak, rather than this stuff up here, which is often injected from others. But where does it? The big stuff comes from a heart, or from the belly, or from other parts of this marvelous instrument which we've been given. And I think that appreciation of being part of a live orchestra, and particularly, just singing with others and actually toning and all kinds of things which are not on the menu in conventional musical education, I think, is rather sort of thrilling for, I think the body appreciates it, because, oh, thank you, yes, you're giving me some attention.
Mm.
So I don't know if that's any kind of an answer.
Yeah. I mean, you covered quite a lot of different principles of health and well-being there, actually.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about this Botswana word. What is the word again?
I think it's Isidomo, and I will check it, but I think it's
okay. That's the cry. I mean, there is quite a lot of this is a phrase actually that you gave me, having worked with me a little bit on the chapter that I have written, and seen the work that I've done, is grief tending. I hadn't heard that phrase, grief tending, before. And thank you for it, because it now is in the repertoire of my
it's to interrupt you for a moment, just to correct the record, for the record. Grief tending is a thing. If you Google it, it is the work of Sibonfu Some and Validomo Some, those wonderful people from the Ivory Coast, brought the African way of grieving.
I must get those references, because I should add that, because I've used it as a subtitle.
Right.
One of the bits in the chapter that no, it makes grief a dignified process.
Yes.
And whereas grief is in our culture often very repressed and private, whereas in, say, for example, in the Ivory Coast with the people that you've mentioned, and in other non-Western cultures, and even in some of the more freed up Western cultures, say the Celtic culture, or the around the Arctic Circle, and the Inuits and so forth, and the people who live with them, they're all kind of open voiced, and there is so much more of a sense of village supporting individual and collective containment through crisis.
Yes.
And I think the workshops have, in a way, been a little village for the afternoon that they go through, or whatever the structure is, where those kinds of rituals are enacted, actually, within the limits of the workshop, but nevertheless with profound helpful results.
Yes.
Do you remember anything about those moments? Or
well, I'm going to, for instance, I think I have a sort of light baritone voice, so my natural register. But what I enjoyed playing with, and I had the opportunity to play with, was my deeper register, and the idea of being able to harmonize, or to just come into that, because we are taught, or you teach us, a very basic kind of structuring map of how to navigate around our voices, and the idea that there is a kind of a basement. The basement is down here, and one can use one has a big chest, one can open one's chest, and sorry, that may be distorting, but one can definitely do the Brian Blessed kind of voice, which is big and operatic. But, it's culturally not okay in our culture. The idea of beauty, for instance, is a big thing. So a particular example was how much I enjoyed harmonizing with another participant, and she's a soprano, and she was singing a very very beautiful kind of phrase, or just a sort of arrangement of phrasing of notes, and I was loving having a bass line underneath it, and that sense of those two kind of marrying together and creating a harmonic, which was very beautiful. And that I was part of that. That was beautiful moment. But it was entirely kind of unscripted. It was free, unstructured time playing together in a kind of improvised slot. I think it was, we had 3 minutes or something to do it, but it was 3 minutes of joy.
Yeah.
And you know, I've had you know, I think you referred to my having difficulty. I think the blockages that come when it comes to, one of the difficulties I think is, no, I'm going to talk about difficulties. One of the positive things about the experience of a group with the permission and so on is it does, it lets something off the lead. It allows, let me just try and be specific about this letting off the lead thing. The range of emotion, watching people do, because I should explain that at some point during the vocal Tai Chi session, there is a kind of option, which is to do individual work. It is, obviously, this is not something which, when you learn a song which somebody else has written, that you would be doing. You wouldn't be drawing on. What I witness is people actually, what is the, I mean, it's not quite jazz, but it has something of that quality of the playful, but it's not the same as jazz because it's also self-exploration. There's an element at which it's not just playing with what we know, which is great because that's fun, but it's actually sometimes what I've witnessed and had the privilege of witnessing is people being in the moment and allowing whatever comes to come. And that is a kind of a channeled, live, almost like a seance, in the sense that what comes is unknown. It's invited, but we can't, you know, as I say, sometimes the sounds are very extraordinary. They can range from the primal agony to the ecstatic. Afterwards, there is this option to share. The group shares its feedback and its appreciation of and certainly I found it very affirming to hear that my voice could be and can be an instrument which is not just directed from outside. It can be an expression of something which is within. So I just think it is it is a way of seeing what can human beings, when they are let loose in captivity, they are able to show that what it is to be human is much bigger, and we are much greater and more amazing than our social selves. But do you feel that the storytelling element, because playback theatre is about community storytelling, which is a very primal village sort of thing to do. What I experience, as you say, it's just hard to remember the detail, but what I do remember is that music seems to be an emotional language, and it seems that the journeys that people go on seem to have a structure to them, which is akin to witnessing a journey or a story that has an arc, has a movement. And one can sort of, that's one way in which I watch these things. I'm with the person, I'm saying, gosh, they're going there, and gosh, then they're going there. And the experience in my nervous system is I'm hearing these musical sounds, but there's something in me which is also I don't know, in a kind of, not in a conscious way, not with my mind, but it's getting a sense of, this is storytelling. It feels like somebody goes into some kind of space in which it's at a certain frequency, it's at a certain pitch, it's at a certain tone, there's a certain part of the voice being used, and the whole body is sort of involved, and they are in their own world. That's the other thing, is that it isn't performance art in the same way, I think, as we would conventionally know. Definitely an actor would be pulled up short if he got stuck in his head, because he said, remember the audience, you know, you've got to project. And I mean, that can be I don't know if that's a note you would ever give, actually, in these things.
That's a great question, actually, but I think at certain stages it can be a note that I might give. It depends whether the person is there as purely as a sort of internal inquiry, and that's enough for them, or whether they're there because the internal inquiry is going to inform them as part of their work as a performer.
Yes.
And then if they're in that field and they want to deepen their relationship with themselves in order that they can go back out and perform with more of themselves, there may be a point at which you would say, remember the audience. But I think it wouldn't necessarily come right at the beginning of that.
The idea that we are bodies, but we have at the core of our life, at the beginning of our life, there is the expectation that we will be met by somebody as mammals, and that we will get this sense of welcome, this sense of belonging, a sense of being held. And where that can take us is in a place of healthy attachment, you know, secure attachment, which can then allow us to become playful. And I like the idea of being tuned, or attuning myself. And I think a healthy group is like a collective little orchestra which tunes itself. And I think that the lead comes from the top, and that's why I think your work is special, because it comes from you. The sense of stillness and the sense of connection. If you weren't a connected human being, it wouldn't be what it is. But because you are connected, I think the resonance of and the manner in which you very beautifully lead people into the place where they can begin to work has something to do with this phenomenon of well, the breath and sound. And I think that is the fundamental thing, is the heartbeat of the mother in the womb. And I think one can go into a very deep place of relaxation if one is reminded of this idea. But I wanted to say how much I feel that your fertile seedbed of creativity and your enabling or your encouraging and helping of others to access the source within themselves of creativity, of which we are all, let's say, we're all creations, aren't we? But we are magical because we can create, and everybody can do it, actually. And a lot of us don't believe it. But this cuts deeper than our beliefs, because it goes to the nervous system. Something which I hugely value.
Thank you, Peter. I mean, if we kind of go through the layers of ourselves so that we can kind of meet the different resistances that stop that sense of belonging, but almost the journey is guided by a call back to that, I think, on some level. But we may have to go through obstacles to get to it.
Yes. Just as we talk about the music of the spheres, that the planets all have their songs, so every soul has a song. And I love the idea that we are looking for our song. In fact, look what they've done to my song, Ma, is a lyric from, I don't know if you remember that song. So that could be a motto for somebody. So retrieving the soul, retrieving the song, that could be another sort of subtitle to this kind of work. I think there is a kind of healing dimension to it. Music as healing, as music in the sense of holding, of using all of us.
Yeah, I wanted to say one other thing was that we talked about going back to the home and coming back to the earth. And I just thought about the double meaning of the word conductor.
Absolutely.
And in a way, I mean, in my choirs project, I'm an actual conductor. But in this project, I have a sort of conductor function, as you talked about holding the space. But it's more like earthing the space to allow those things to move as they need to move. So yeah, thank you, Peter. That's really rich and very generous of you to, I could feel you kind of digging into your psyche and your memory and your deepest you know, and using musical vocabulary, which I know is not your first language, so I appreciate you finding the vocabulary as best you could. And I do appreciate the point you made about storytelling actually as well, because I was going to just pick you up on that with it's sort of non-verbal storytelling, but there is an inner narrative that is being followed through the improvising voice. And sometimes words come from that and sometimes they don't. Sometimes I say, are there words? But words come at a slightly higher level of conscious awareness. And there's a subterranean non-verbal space where there is the story that is the untold story that hasn't quite formed into words yet, and where can be sounded.
Yeah, and it is a safe environment in which to happen. I must stress this, that it's spellbinding to watch because it has something of the seance about it, but it's not in, at least in my experience, it has never been exactly spooky, insofar as human beings are spooky in themselves, and maybe there may be spookiness, but what is beautiful, it's spooky in a positive way. It's a sense of the wonder of, wow, you know, where did that come from?
Thank
you. Is that the Jenni or the Peter that we meet in a cafe? No, this is something within, which is coming through, like in a seance, which is, I think, one of the highest, most wonderful callings of the principle of a great conductor, conducting the energy from the universe through us.
Wow, I think we've peaked.
Enough.
Wonderful. I'll put the recording off.